A few years back, I started a trend in the JRPG community talking about 10 out of 10 JRPGs. Well, I've thought it over and I've come up with 10 more JRPGs I personally consider to be 10 out of 10. Now, they're not perfect, no game is, but to me, they're the cream of the crop and everyone should be playing them. What JRPGs do you consider to be 10 out of 10? Let me know down in the comments. There have been a lot of amazing games this generation, but for me, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has topped them all. It lovingly recreates so many incredible moments from the original game, and it expands the scope in so many fun ways, from exploration, combat, and minigames. Yet, it still managed to keep me on my toes until the very end. The thing I kept saying to myself the whole time while playing is, how is this game real? How is it so big? How is there so much content? And how did the team manage to make it so quickly after remake? It's simply stunning. And the game put me through every emotion from excitement, sadness, frustration, and joy. Very few games ever managed to get all of that out of me, so I'd be lying to myself if I didn't include it on this list. I genuinely don't know if any game this generation is going to top it outside of maybe Part 3 in the remake series or Persona 4 Revival. Considering the original is my favorite game of all time, that's certainly possible. I once called Trials of Mana the greatest JRPG remake, and I stand by that. It managed to modernize the original Super Famicom game in a beautiful way. Beautiful new visuals, fun action combat, and a unique story. I love how you can choose your party members before you even start the game. You know exactly who your party through the adventure is going to be. I can't think of a single other JRPG that's ever done that. But what I really appreciate about Trials of Mana is it doesn't try to be more than it is. It's a fairly linear, traditional style JRPG where you go town hopping and try to stop an evil force. As someone that grew up in the 90s, I appreciate that simplicity. It felt cozy and comforting. I also love the various costume changes that come with changing classes. I always enjoy customizing my characters in games. And what's nice is once you beat the game, there's 3 other characters with brand new adventures waiting for you. It's almost like 2 games in one. If you haven't played this gem yet, you really should. Now, I know money's tight these days and it's not always easy to buy every game you want, but today's sponsor, Instant Gaming, can help you out. With Instant Gaming, you can save big on some of the best JRPG franchises, like over 50% on the Mana series, over 60% on one of my all-time favorites, Octopath Traveler 2, massive deals across the Final Fantasy franchise, and even more on the best JRPGs out there. And if you want to pick any of these up, check out the link in my description. Using that link helps me get more collaborations and directly supports the channel. Thanks once again to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to some more 10 out of 10 JRPGs. Now, you're not going to find a bigger champion for Sakura Wars anywhere on the internet. I unapologetically love this game. It's fantastic. I love how goofy and silly it can be, yet somehow really wholesome and heartwarming too. It blends this sort of visual novel / dating sim gameplay moments with fast-paced action combat and giant robots. I mean, seriously, what's not to love? What really makes it work are the characters. They all have such wildly different and fun personalities, from the wholesome Sakura, the tomboy Hatsuho, or the bookworm Claris. I genuinely loved all of them. It was also fun to purposely pick bad dialogue options to see what would happen. Plus, that addictive as heck theme song. I remember when that game first came out and I had that song on loop for months. I also ended up getting the platinum trophy for it, and I don't regret a single second of that. I honestly wish I could get it all over again because that journey was so much fun. It's a real shame that Sega never ported that game off PlayStation 4 because it deserved better. But if you've got a PlayStation, what are you doing? Just buy it and enjoy the game already. I promise you won't regret it. I'll be honest with you guys, most of the Greater Trails series just isn't for me, especially the Cold Steel arc, but my goodness, was the remake for Trails in the Sky First Chapter magical. Giving these characters voices breathed new life into them like never before. I know their voice in the later games, but I'm talking about the Sky games where Estelle and Joshua are the main characters. And the better production values made the old stiff story sequences way more interesting. I really fell in love with characters like Sherazard and Olivier. They were just so funny and charming. Not to mention the game just looks stunning now and runs at a smooth 60 frames per second with no loading times going in and out of towns. The other biggest change was to the combat system, and it might be my favorite in any game ever. It evolves the Daybreak combat system where it mixes light action combat and then transitions to turn-based. Super fun, super fluid, a little bit hard, but always enjoyable. And there's also the high speed mode edition, which was amazing. It makes side quests and fighting trash enemies a breeze. Now, I played the original PSP release at launch, but this felt like a brand new game, even though it was incredibly faithful. I never played second chapter though, so I cannot wait for that later this year. If you haven't played this masterpiece already, you should, because you're missing out. Are you guys getting sick of me talking about this game yet? I feel like I've been putting Grand Blue Fantasy Relink in every video lately, but it's so good that I can't leave it off. But what makes it so good, and why do I keep putting it on all these lists? Well, it's got a tight story, all killer, no filler, 12 to 15 hour campaign, these crazy set pieces after crazy set pieces, fantastic production values, and it's just a really beautiful game. Plus, you have this huge roster of playable characters that all play very differently. You have casters and gun users, but then you also have melee users that use swords, spears, and everything in between. My personal favorite was Fairy, who fights with a whip and these ghostly animals, but there were also a ton that I just never even tried. Not to mention a massive endgame. It's kind of like Monster Hunter, where there's all these big bosses, you're grinding for better gear to fight harder bosses. Plus, you have co-op so you can play with your buddies. And there's also a big expansion called Endless Ragnarok coming out this summer. It includes a new story, new characters, new bosses, and a new roguelike mode. Say goodbye to your social life. Simply put, I can't think of a real negative about this game, and you definitely should be playing it. Now, from one incredible action RPG to the next, we have Nier Automata. First off, this game has sublime action combat from the masters at Platinum Games. Blazing fast, cool combos, that perfect dodge slowdown, plus a little robot that shoots. And you play as 3 different characters, 2B, 9S, and A2. And they all play very differently. You have 2B, who's a pretty traditional character, but then you have 9S, who is not a great action combat character, but then you can do these interesting hacking sequences. And throughout the game, there's all these cool shifts in camera perspectives. You have your typical behind the shoulder, but then there's top down, side view, all kinds of wild stuff. The story is very thought-provoking about what does it truly mean to be a human and our purposes in life. Each character has their own perspective on these themes, and it's really interesting to see them as the game goes on. And it's told through several endings. Some of them are kind of joke endings, which are always amusing, but there's plenty that are the real endings as well as the true ending, and you're going to want to get there. And this is all set to the beautiful, ethereal, and somewhat haunting soundtrack by Keiichi Okabe. Absolutely stunning music, one of my all-time favorite video game soundtracks. But the real question is, where is the sequel? It's been almost 10 years since the game was released, and outside of the Nier Replicant remake, there hasn't been a new game. The game sold insanely well, so this seems like a massive missed opportunity. Well, until that game comes, we'll still have this masterpiece to enjoy. Octopath Traveler is without question my favorite new JRPG franchise. I love its stunning HD 2D art style, incredible turn-based combat, and unique approach to storytelling with its 8 character stories. But in my opinion, 2 is the best of the bunch. Visually, it looks the best. There's just way more details, it runs better, has some really interesting camera movements, and it also has a mix of day and night. And to me, more of the character stories are actually interesting. My 3 favorite are easily Throne, Hikari, and Agnia. They were all told so well, super compelling, and you want to see what happens until the very end. But my absolute favorite of the bunch has to be Agnia. I love her heartwarming story of wanting to follow her mother's footsteps and become a performer. And it also has some really fun expanded combat. Each character has their own individual super moves. You can still do that really fun mix of class abilities where you can mix and match abilities. You have to break the locks to stun enemies. The combat itself is just fast and really fun. Not to mention that incredible music all around, whether it's awesome town themes, combat themes, or even the menu theme. It's all amazing. Hands down, one of the best JRPGs of the modern era and an absolute must play. Playing Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch for the first time was absolutely magical. To have a game so clearly inspired by and made in collaboration with Studio Ghibli was amazing. It was the most beautiful game I had ever played up until that point. I remember often booting up the game just to walk around the world's various towns because I was so in awe of how it looked. And the game brought back that classic JRPG in an era where console JRPGs were basically dead. You had a world map, you had the classic town hopping, and a heartwarming story about saving your mom. And the remastered version makes an already stunning game even more beautiful. It has higher resolutions, runs at a higher frame rate, and to me, it's just the definitive way to play this. It also has this really interesting combat system. It's sort of a mix of real-time and turn-based, where you select an action, but then things are kind of on a timer, and you can swap out different familiars that you can fight with, kind of like Pokemon, but then you can also fight with the characters themselves. And you experience all of this set to gorgeous music composed by Joe Hisaishi, who composed most of the soundtracks for the Studio Ghibli films. And I'll admit, going back to play it now, it doesn't quite hold up as well as I remember, but it was a seminal JRPG and I truly hold it in high esteem, and I think it's one everyone should play. Now, Ys 9 is a very personal pick. I know everyone loves 8, but for me personally, I just like 9 better. I actually find the story really interesting and weird, and I wouldn't dare spoil it because the twists in this game are wild. But for me, it's all about the gameplay. Yeah, you're in this great castle town, but what you do there and how it's all designed is so good. There's so many side activities scattered around where you do things like collecting different things. It's very addicting. Whether it's hidden treasures, the blue petals, mini portals that you need to clear all over town, it's all just so fun. And you need to use your gifts to complete all of this. You can glide around town if you hop off something high, you can run up walls, and you can even see through walls. Exploring it all was just a blast. And I think it perfected the Ys 3 party system. Each character has an attack style, and enemies are weak to different ones, so you have to constantly be swapping different characters so you can damage different enemies. And the combat is just so fluid and fun. You have really fun bosses. Fighting the normal trash enemies is an absolute blast. There's great bosses, and to me, one of the best final bosses in any Ys game. And it's also one of the most enjoyable platinum trophies I've ever got. I originally played it on PS4, but I'd consider going back to do it all over again on PlayStation 5. It's that good. Now, if you've ever heard things or just never gave it a try, it really is one of the best action JRPGs you can play. And finally, if you want to talk about a perfect video game, the Super Mario RPG remake is about as close as it gets. It's got a super charming, really fun story with new and familiar Mario characters. You have this really silly Mallow and the iconic Geno. And in the game, you team up with Bowser instead of fighting him. And it has this really cool timing-based combat system where you need to time button presses with attacks and defenses. And this is kind of where that style of turn-based combat originated, if I'm not mistaken. And to me, it just has near perfect pacing. You're never doing anything super boring or going around doing something off the beaten path that doesn't make sense, or levels are never too long. It all just feels really snappy. And in the remake, it even got rid of all the fluff and annoying issues from the original. It added new things like awesome team-up attacks, and you can swap party members out mid-fight. The only little problem I have is the platforming, since the camera is isometric, so it can kind of be hard to judge jumps, but other than that, to me, it's perfect. And the game is on the shorter side, like 10 to 12 hours, but honestly, I'd rather have an all-killer, no-filler 10 hours than 20 to 40 hours of a game that drags. Simply put, if you own a Switch or a Switch 2, you need to play this game. It's that good. Now, these were some 10 out of 10 JRPGs, some of them on the shorter side, but if you're looking to dive into a massive 100+ hour epic JRPG adventure, but not sure which one to pick, watch this video next.